Are high intensity workouts worth it? Welcome to part one of our 4-part movement series episodes. Here with me, I have Coach Jen, as she's known. Also, her name is Jen Chestnut. So I'm really excited. We're going to, in part one, we're going to talk about high intensity exercise. Part two, we're going to talk about cardio. Part three, we're going to talk about core training. And then part four, we're going to dive in and talk about bar and Pilates. And it's going to be so great. So we're going to dive in with each, and we're going to talk about, some positives of all of them, because there's amazing things to each one of those 4 categories I just mentioned. And there's also some misconceptions and some things out there that we want all of you to be aware of so that we can work to prevent and get rid of dysfunction and pain, because no one wants to live with dysfunction or pain. And then we're going to also be sharing how we can make each of them better. So Jen, do you just want to share a little bit about you for those listening that aren't familiar with who you are?
Sure. My name is Jen Chestnut, and I have been in the sports medicine field for over 25 years now. And there's a spider crawling down my wall.
Oh, no.
I've worked in the rehab and orthopedic setting for a long time, and I've worked in the strength and conditioning setting with professional athletes for quite a while. I love finding dysfunction in the body and fixing it. It's like my hide and seek that I love to do.
Yes, that's where we definitely collaborate, and we're like, oh, there's something wrong with your body. How can we help you?
Yeah.
So I want to start off today talking about, high intensity training, right? That's HIIT training, Tabata, CrossFit style workouts, Orange Theory type classes. And, to start off, like, we're not saying like these are bad training modalities. Don't get me wrong. I love a good HIIT training. Like, I have it in my core studio workout at, because it's great. We're so short on time, right? We're so busy. Many of you are busy moms. And, so having those short workouts can be really awesome for you. I love that, right? But the biggest thing we have to really start to understand is that the right style of training for you right now? Because there's a time and a place for everything. So, well, I know I love this style of training. I also know that there's things we need to be aware of so that we're not causing aches and pains. Jen, you want to talk about some of the things that you love about high intensity training?
I love that you can just get in and get it done. I love that it can be a challenge on your cardiovascular system, especially for someone who's just starting out. A HIIT training is going to be a whole new world. And then as you start getting better and better, you can always change what your intervals are to make it harder or to make it easier, depending on your day.
Yeah. And I know research out there, backs up the short, intense workouts. So I'm all for it. So that's one thing I want you ladies to all know is, like, we back this style of training when it's right for your body. That's really the biggest thing. Because there's research that shows, like, it's really good for your heart health. It shows that, 10 minutes of moderate to intense exercising every day can be more powerful than 2 long workouts a week, right? And that's what I'm always promoting. Like, get moving every single day. It doesn't always have to be intense and hard, but if that's what's right for your body, then great. And if it's not, well, we've got a lot to share with you. So let's get in and talk about the misconceptions, some of the common things that Jen and I have seen over our, what did we say, combined like 45 years between you and me, something along that lines. We've been both doing this.
It's something up there in numbers.
So we've worked with a lot of people. We've seen a lot of dysfunction. We've helped women and men get out of dysfunction to get back to the activities in life that they love. And really, that's like the goal, right? That's our big goal for everyone, is if there's some dysfunction or something going on, we want to help you because we want you to be able to do the high intensity training that you love doing, but in a way that's really healing and nourishing and positive for your body, right? So let's start out with one of my favorites. I've been a geek about form since I was in college. That was something that was definitely drilled in me in college, and exercise science was like all about the form. So I came out of college really just super anal about, we have to have good form with any sort of exercise we're doing. Otherwise, it may or may not even be effective. And it actually may be what's causing injury. Now, I also want to add to this that now, as I have my oldest as a teenager and doing a lot more, all three kids are active and stuff, but in kind of that school, high school setting, coaching and things, I'm really seeing this is starting a lot younger. There's really amazing coaches out there and instructors that work with youth and really know what they're doing and are all about form. And there's others, well, they need a little more education in that area. So what I'm really starting to see, and I guess I saw this with myself when I was younger too, but didn't realize it till now, right? Is that there is a lot of this poor form that's actually taught and starts when our kids are, even grade school, heck, right? Like playing out in the soccer or running or whatever it is. So that's something that I have noticed. And so here's the thing, when we talk about all of these things and we talk about form and we talk about, when you're doing the movements and doing them the right way, to be open to learning new ways of movement, right? And recognizing, oh gosh, just because I've done this for the last 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, however long it's been, doesn't mean that that's the best way for your body. Right, Jen?
Yeah, totally. And what a lot of people don't realize was really this kind of HIIT training came from how we trained athletes at certain periods in a whole year progression, but it was never every day. And now some people think, oh, this is the way to do it, I'm going to train every day. Well, they set themselves up so quickly for injury and for overtraining. And like you said, form is a big thing. And in some of these arenas, kind of bad form is encouraged so that you can get the heavier weight or get through it faster or get in the most amount of reps you can. And it's not worth it to sacrifice your form and your overall muscle, bone, tissue health for just a short, quick workout.
Yeah, absolutely. So the only time I've ever injured myself working out was when I had another instructor who knew I was an instructor and just pushed me. And, you're in that class and I'm like, I knew better, but I was like, it was like one of those things where you just like, you couldn't, like that pressure was so intense. You couldn't back down. And oh my gosh, I couldn't extend my arms straight for a week. I blew out my biceps. It was insane. It's clearly I never went back. I was like, yeah, that is not my cup of tea. Like I want to work out to get strong, as I hope everybody wants. So that should be a big goal, to be strong and be healthy. But we should never feel injured after a workout. Like there's muscle soreness, things like that. That can be okay. But our low back should never hurt. Our knees, our neck, shoulders, all that. Like we should never have pain. And something else to understand is that our body likes to cheat. I know it sounds crazy, but our body will always find a way to cheat. So if we're not paying attention, we're not slowing down our movements and really being cognizant of what we're doing, then our body can tend to cheat. And so many times the patterns that you'll see is we'll see a lot of like really tight hip flexors, right? Well, we already sit too much during the day anyway. So if we're then during our workouts, we're doing squats or lunges or whatever exercise it might be, and we're really, or crunches is a good one, but we'll get deeper into that in our talking about our core episode. But if we think about, okay, well, we're overusing our hip flexors, potentially our quads, then you tend to overuse your low back. And then you also tend to be more rounded and tight in your chest and pecs, right? So like, that's the pattern of cheating, as I like to say, that the body tends to fall into. Part of it because of all the sitting and poor posture that I see so many people have today. And again, it's starting even younger because kids are sitting with computers and phones and all that jazz, right? So we have to be so aware. So we're doing our workouts, our strength training, our high intensity workouts. Many times we've got to slow it down, right? Because if we're going too fast or we're going too heavy, those areas that are already overly tight and restricting are cheating, most likely doing too much work. And so it's hard for our brain, right? Because we have that like go hard or go home mentality. I mean, Jen, how many times do we have this conversation with our core rehab moms or students, I should say, because we're not all moms. All the time. Every time we bring in a new group of amazing ladies, it's always this conversation of, oh, well, I got to have this hard workout. And it's like, okay, but you're dealing with some back pain, or maybe you've got some diastasis recti, maybe you're dealing with some occasional incontinence. Those are signs and symptoms that your body's trying to communicate with you that like we've got to shift something. Okay. So when we recognize that you have that like go hard or go home mentality, like first off, be aware of it. Like I say, have a conversation with yourself about it. Like it's okay, but we've been in these patterns for so long that we have to start to recognize when it's time to change them so that we can get out of dysfunctional movement patterns, so that we can eventually get back to doing these higher intensity training. If that's what you want, maybe that's not your thing. That's totally fine. But if it is, we want to help get you there. But we have to take these breaks and stop encouraging the poor movement patterns. Something else I want to mention with kind of this go hard or go home mentality comes the segue of over exercising, which, ladies, if you are over exercising, most likely you're messing up your cortisol patterns as well. We see that a lot. And we tend to talk about cortisol, right? As like, especially if you're someone who's like, oh gosh, I'm having a hard time losing these last 5, 10, 20 pounds, whatever it is. We tend to just blame it on cortisol, right? Like, oh, it's because we have too much cortisol. And that is absolutely a possible thing. But here's the connection that's missed a lot. That over exercising can actually be driving up your cortisol. But guess what? Now, this is all driven from the brain. When we are overly stressed, and over-exercising is a stress to the body, then eventually at some point, and for some people, this might be a shorter period of time. For others, this might take like 20 years, to where then your brain starts telling your adrenals, oh gosh, well, we might as well stop making so much cortisol because they don't need it. They're not it's not getting used up correctly. Right. So then what happens is the body starts to decrease its production of cortisol. And then you end up in a place where you don't have enough cortisol. And I actually see this more than with women who have too high of cortisol. We talk about high cortisol all the time. We don't talk enough about low cortisol, but it's something I want to put out there, because if you're working out really, really hard, maybe you don't have any aches and pains, or you're not peeing your pants or any of that. That's awesome. But maybe you're like, gosh darn, I am so tired all the time, right? So there's these two different elements we could be talking about. Or maybe you've got both. Maybe you've got some pain, and maybe you're like, I'm tired all the time. But you keep feeling like, gosh, I have to just go do that hardcore workout because that's what your brain thinks it needs, not your body, but your brain. So I just want to clarify and recognize that. Jen, you want to speak some more to any of that?
I know the effects of having that, where I exercised too hard. My cortisol was being driven up and I was exhausted all the time, especially first thing in the morning. I had no cortisol output in the morning because I had burned through everything. So I completely know that. And I think a big thing, especially it can totally go with men, but also with women in these kind of HIIT, Orange Theory, Tabata, CrossFit type settings, is that competition factor, right? Someone next to you is farther along in the reps, or she's lifting more weight today, and so you've got to up it. And I think we need to try to switch that mentality to compete with yourself. So, let's say it's a day where it's heavy deadlifts, but you're feeling your low back bothering you. There's nothing wrong with going lighter on the deadlifts, or even substituting to a different movement that day that's better for you. It doesn't mean that you're having an easier workout. You're still having a hard workout, but it's what's right for your body. So I think switching that mentality to, okay, I'm going to compete with myself and push my cardiovascular, not push my back by trying to get this heavier deadlift up and rounding, but being able to do a perfect deadlift with a straight spine and my pelvic floor and deep core properly connected.
Yeah, I think that's so important to reiterate, right? Listening to your body for that day. Because ladies, we have to remember, like, we have cycles. And if you're not having a cycle, there is still this cyclical effective nature, the moon, things like that. So we're always cycling. And so are men too, in some degrees. There's always these cycles going on. So we have to recognize that some days you're just going to feel more like on it, like, gosh, I can lift really heavy today. And then maybe that next week, like Jen said, you can't. And the problem is, if you just push through the pain, whatever it is, that's where the injury starts. And then all of a sudden you're like, gosh, the next day you're like, oh, my back hurts. Then what happens, because I've heard this many, many times over the years, is that, oh, well, my back hurts, so I'm not going to go in and move today, because we actually think that not moving is going to help the pain. When the reality is movement, the right kind of movement actually is what your body needs. Because if we have a little injury, so what happens? Here's how I kind of like to, my perspective of explaining this. So like, remember we were talking about the body always cheats. Okay. So if you strain your back a little because say you lifted a little too heavy, you were going a little too fast, you just weren't connected well through your core, right? For whatever reason that day, you're a little more tired. And then all of a sudden, so your back feels a little strained. Okay. Because it did a little more work than it really needed to, because your hamstrings, glutes, deep core weren't activated enough. Right. So then what happens, that the fascia and the muscles in the lower back area, well, they can tend to really tighten up because they think, oh gosh, I'm feeling some strain here, so I've got to tighten up to protect. And this is where injury starts, ladies, is that all of a sudden now the low back thinks I've got to be grippy and grabby because, oh, I felt that strain and I don't want anything to happen to those vertebrae, right? And so then that kind of can derail us from our normal workouts. So then maybe we stop doing what we were doing, which not that we should go back and do high intensity stuff, but we have to shift our mindset about how to work out. And there's so much we can do from a movement perspective that can be really healing and really nourishing to our body, that helps to get that back to chill out, right? So we just have to recognize that anytime with an injury, and there's always outliers. There's always, there's always, crazy injuries with that are more than just a little bit of a strain on a low back, things like that. But I want you all to recognize and tuning in with your body that if you feel like your low back is hurting, don't go back to the crazy high intensity stuff, but also not do anything, because that is just going to make things tighter and tighter and tighter. And you're going to continue to experience more and more imbalances as time goes. Jen, anything else about pain?
Well, one thing, you're talking about how like you've got this back pain. And what a lot of people don't see is when you're doing these type of workouts and our bodies cheat, we recruit extra muscles. So let's just take a super simple pull-up, for example. If you are doing pull-ups for time or for as many as possible, a lot of people, especially for time, you're going to start cheating your movement. So you're not doing your standard pull-up where it's your biceps and your lats as your main drivers and your core as a main driver. But now people have their obliques kicking in. They have their pecs kicking in. They've got their glutes kicking in and their hip flexors kicking in. They're using all these muscles. Well, you start getting these grippy muscle patterns and you start getting overused muscles. And the minute your hip flexors decide, hey, this is my movement, your core says, okay, take over, and your core turns off. That's the quickest way to have an injury happen. So this extra recruiting of muscles is part of the body's way of cheating. And when you're going too fast or you're going too heavy, even doing let's just take a simple kettlebell squat. If you have too much weight on that kettlebell, everything's going to kick in to make you go down and up, and your quads and your hip flexors are going to be over recruited to do it. Your low back is going to be pulling and your core is going to be off. You just set yourself up for injury, but you also teach your body a pattern that when you do this squat, all these muscles are needed. So you're just setting yourself up for dysfunction.
Yeah. So let's talk about what are some things that everybody can start doing. And we know you've mentioned some of them, but let's put them on a list for everybody of like, what are some of the things that you can do to start making your high intensity workouts more effective for your body? So I'll start with, I love teaching women to slow down. When you can slow down your exercise, all of a sudden now, especially when we're working on new patterns or bringing awareness to, gosh, am I even feeling this movement in the right way? Just asking your body and paying attention to an exercise. Because if you start to notice, gosh, all I'm doing is I'm feeling it in my neck and my traps, or my hip flexors are just gnarly. Like you start getting those traps and hip flexors to doing all the work, then that exercise is no longer effective for your body. It's actually part of the problem. Now, you can take that exact same exercise, slow it down, bring awareness to how you're activating your deep core, including that light pelvic floor activation, what's happening with your lats, what's happening, quads, you go just through all the lists of major muscle groups, as well as thinking about how everything's connected in the body, then you can actually make that same exercise super effective for your body. Now, you might find you can do only 25 or 50% of the reps, but you have to be okay with that because you will get stronger and working the right muscles, but you have to slow down. I mean, I love this in January, I did a new workout, a squat workout for Core Studio. And I was like, we're going to go like the slow and burn. And oh my God, like even I filmed it and I was sore, like good sore the next day, but it's amazing to me. And I did that. I was like, I'm going to show my ladies, like, you don't need any weights. You can just do some really slow squat type motions and really make yourself a lot stronger. Anyway, okay, Jen, take the next one.
So I would say, I mean, I've got two I want to do, but I'm going to go with my favorite, which is don't be afraid to modify the movement. Some people are so afraid of that word modification because they think it's going to make them weaker or that their workout's going to be easier. But you're modifying for a movement or a weight or a speed or whatever that is best for your body. So you're actually making it harder for you, but in a safe way, because then you're not going to be cheating.
Yeah, you got to modify for where your body is today. And so many times when we get ladies to do this, they'll be like, oh my gosh, I actually felt the modification more. And I'm like, yeah, because your body's not ready for that intermediate or advanced level. Just because it's advanced doesn't mean it's better for you. Jen, since you had a second one, why don't you say your second one?
Okay. I would say also to go along with your slow down, decrease your weight. And just everyone, when you hear us say slow down, decrease the weight, that doesn't mean this is your end all game. You can be back up to that faster tempo, to that higher weight, but let's get the right muscles recruited and working and knowing how to recruit themselves and work. And then you build upon it and you're moving stronger, taller, better, faster at the right way instead of starting out with dysfunction and ending up hurt in the end.
I love it. Yeah, that's such good advice. We teach all the time. Okay, so my next one is range of motion. And many times it means like a squat's a good example, right? So many times we've been taught go as low as you can. And when we go so deep, you tuck your pelvis, you're putting so much pressure on your pelvic floor and your low back, we're not recruiting the right muscles. So finding a range of motion where you feel the right activation and you feel the right connections. And sometimes I get ladies that are like, Erica, literally I moved like an inch, but I felt it. I'm like, okay, well, let's work with that inch to get you back eventually to having bigger ranges of motion, right? So it's like everything. It's like we pull it back and then we eventually get you back there. But ranges of just decreasing your range of motion, or like back to the squat, like many times if you stay higher in a squat, because I just see ladies going too deep too soon, and then we shut off all the muscles we should be activating, and all of a sudden all those cheater grippy muscles take over. So just stay higher in your squats. Like that's an example. Like a pull up, I know a lot of you listening probably like, Eric, I can't even do a pull up. That's okay. Do a precursor to a pull-up. Just do like a dead hang with your arms and start feeling that wrapping around your rib cage and getting those lats and mid back to start to recruit a little bit. Like we don't always have to do this full-blown exercise for it to be actually super beneficial for your body. Okay, I have one last one, and then if Jen has anything to add, we'll go there. So breath work. I just want to remind everybody, use your breath more to your advantage. Like so many times we're fixated on the move we're doing, and we're not like thinking, oh gosh, well, how are we inhaling? Where are we inhaling to? How is our exhale helping us facilitate to become stronger and more connected with this exercise? And like everything that we teach, right, is really focused around deep core. And well, how do we recruit our deep core effectively? Our breath plays a absolutely huge role. So whether you're doing squats or pull-ups or shoulder press or whatever it is, we think like arms and legs are all separate, but ladies, they're all intertwined and connected through our core. So we are all about teaching you how to effectively strengthen your deep core, including that pelvic floor, right? And that then will actually make everything else you do, your leg exercises, your upper body exercises, just way more stinking effective. Okay, Jen, do you have anything else to add to our high intensity talk?
Yeah, my last one would be your body will thank you if you don't do this every day. You want to think of your high intensity as your sprinkles on the cupcake, right? You sprinkle them in, that's what you're going to get just to get a little extra flavor. Don't do it every day because you're going to increase that cortisol. You're going to overtax your muscles. You're going to over fatigue your body. Sprinkle in other stuff. Don't be afraid to go easier. Do something lighter, like taking a walk out in nature, Pilates, yoga, something else to get the body lengthening more, and just something that's easier. Your body will thank you by rewarding you with becoming stronger, with dropping that weight you want, whatever it is.
Yeah, I love that you said that. It is so interesting too. Over the years, I've noticed when women actually pull back their high intensity exercise, that's when they actually lose the weight. It's so counterintuitive, but it's because you were stressing the body. So we have to just recognize that. So ladies, thank you all so much for joining Jen and I today. I just want to let you all know that you can sign up if you haven't yet, got my free pelvic floor guide. It's a great place to start learning more about your body. This is one thing that I've become so passionate about. Well, Jen has too, just teaching women about their body, because we've recognized that women just don't know about their pelvic floor and their deep core, right? And so when you can understand that as an amazing fundamental, it really can help teach you so much about your body and really help to make everything else that you're doing more effective. So ladies, you can find it on my website. It's ericazeal.com/pelvic floor. All one word. Again, that's ericazeal.com/pelvic floor. And Jen and I look forward to seeing you in one of our programs one of these days.